The abandoned wreck. The void was silent. Only the twisted carcass of a ship drifted through the endless dark, its metal hull torn and bleeding sparks like the dying breath of a wounded beast. It had once been a proud human warship. Now it was nothing more than wreckage, abandoned, forgotten, or so the aliens believed. The battle had been swift and merciless. A fleet of alien cruisers had cornered the human vessel, tearing into it with overwhelming firepower. Shields shattered, engines broke, and decks split open to the vacuum of space. The aliens did not waste time with prisoners. To them, humans were dangerous, unpredictable. Better to leave them broken than risk keeping them alive. So, after raining fire on the ship until its lights flickered out, the alien fleet turned away. They left the vessel adrift, confident it was nothing but lifeless scrap. Their commanders even laughed as they reported back to the council. Another human ship reduced to dust. The problem is finished. But the aliens were wrong. Deep within the ruined ship, in the shadows of broken corridors, humans still lived. Captain Eric Kane lay against the cracked wall of the command deck, his arm wrapped in makeshift bandages. The bridge was half exposed to space, sealed only by emergency barriers. Most of the crew were gone, sucked into the void or killed in the attack. Only a handful remained, bloody, burned, and exhausted. Yet their eyes still burned with fire. Status. Kane's voice was hoarse, but steady. A young officer struggled to her feet, brushing ash from her face. Life supports failing, but still running. Powers almost gone. Weapons, nothing left. Sir, we're crippled. Silence followed. Everyone in the shattered bridge knew what that meant. Out here, adrift in deep space, no one was coming for them. No reinforcements, no rescue. Just the cold, endless void. One by one, the crew turned their eyes to their captain, waiting. Kane looked at the ruined consoles, at the sparks dripping from shattered panels, at the ghostly glow of dead screens. The aliens had written them off as corpses, and maybe that's what they were. But Kane's jaw tightened and his eyes hardened. "Then we make do," he said quietly. The words carried weight. In that moment, no one thought of surrender. No one thought of giving up. The silence of the void seemed to tremble with the spark of something dangerous, human defiance. The survivors dragged themselves through broken corridors, searching what was left. They scavenged food packs, oxygen canisters, anything still intact. They pried open storage bays, tore apart ruined consoles, and cannibalized half-dead systems. The ship was a graveyard, but in that graveyard, humans began to work. Hours turned into days. Engines that should never have lit again coughed to life with flickering flames. Weapons, fought beyond repair, were stripped down and reforged with desperate ingenuity. Metal plating from destroyed sections was welded over the hull like scars. Each patch, each repair, was ugly and brutal, but it worked. The survivors were no longer just repairing a ship. They were creating something else. At night, when the few working lights dimmed and exhaustion pulled at their bodies, some whispered that they should not be alive. That perhaps it would be better to let go, to drift into death as the aliens intended. But Kane's voice always cut through the despair. "They left us here to die. Let's prove them wrong." And so they did. The broken ship changed. Slowly, painfully, it reforged itself under the hands of its crew. No longer sleek or clean, it became jagged, scared, and terrifying. A predator's shape, a weapon made from ruin. They gave it a name. Retribution. When the last of the engines roared fully to life, the survivors stood together on the bridge. Their ship was still wounded, still scared, but it was alive. And so were they. Captain Kane looked out at the stars, at the void where the alien fleet had once stood. His voice was steady, almost cold. "They thought this was our grave," he said, "but it's their mistake. They should have finished us. Instead, they left behind the one thing humanity has always needed." "What's that, sir?" an officer asked. Kane's eyes narrowed, and a grim smile touched his lips. "A reason. The survivors fell silent. Each of them knew what he meant. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was their vengeance. The aliens had walked away, but Retribution was coming. And this time, the void would not be silent. The alien fleet had long since vanished into the void, confident they had left nothing behind but silence. But within the scared carcass of the human warship, silence had been replaced with purpose. The survivors worked like demons. Every breath was ragged, every movement slow with exhaustion. Yet they did not stop. They stripped ruined sections of the ship for parts. They dragged scorched plating from collapsed corridors. They cut into broken alien weapons that had lodged themselves in the hull, pulling out pieces of technology they barely understood. To the aliens, those scraps were trash. To the humans, they were tools. Lieutenant Mara Vey pried open the remains of an alien torpedo with bare, blistered hands. She wasn't an engineer, but years of growing up on Earth's hostile terrain had taught her how to survive with nothing but grit and stubbornness. She didn't need to know how alien power cells were meant to function. She only needed to figure out how to make them explode. Nearby, a technician rewired half-burned consoles with salvaged cables, fingers shaking from fatigue. Sparks burned his skin, but he grinned through the pain. "Still works," he muttered to himself. "If it still works, we can still fight." It was madness. Pure, desperate madness. But that madness was the human way. Captain Eric Kane stood over a flickering tactical display. It barely functioned, but it was enough to show him what mattered. The stars, the routes, the nearby systems. Somewhere out there, alien outposts stood unguarded. Somewhere, the enemy laughed, never expecting humans to rise again. He pressed his bloodied hand against the console. "We're not just fixing this ship," he said quietly, loud enough for the crew nearby to hear. "We're reforging it. Every piece of this wreck will carry the memory of what they tried to do to us. Every weapon we mount will be vengeance in steel." The words spread through the crew like fire. They stopped thinking of themselves as survivors. They stopped thinking of themselves as victims. They were builders, fighters, predators, turning the ruin of their ship into something new. And as the ship changed, so did they. Scars covered their faces and hands, but their eyes gleamed sharper each day. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, but it only hardened their resolve. They were no longer a broken crew. They were a pack, and their pack had found a single purpose: retribution. The first true breakthrough came with the engines. What had once been shattered beyond repair now growled back to life, stitched together from human ingenuity and stolen alien parts. The roar shook the entire vessel, rattling the plates, filling every survivor with renewed strength. "We can move again," Mara said, her voice trembling not from fear, but from excitement. But Kane shook his head. "Movement isn't enough. We'll make them fear us." So the crew turned their eyes to the weapons. The human cannons were gone, torn apart in the battle. But the wreck still carried remnants of the alien barrage. Half-melted missile fragments, broken plasma coils, scorched turrets fused into the hull. To an alien engineer, useless debris. To humans, the bones of monsters that could still be sharpened into new blades. Piece by piece, the survivors welded alien weaponry into the ship's frame. Crude, unstable, unpredictable, but functional. The first time they fired, the blast nearly tore the gun mount apart. The crew cheered anyway. They had teeth again. The ship's look transformed with every passing day. Once sleek and ordered, it now bristled with jagged scars, mismatched plating, glowing alien tech fused with human steel. It no longer resembled a warship. It resembled a predator, scared and furious, rising from the ashes. Still, Kane knew weapons and engines were not enough. They needed something greater, a reason to keep moving. One night, as the crew gathered in the dimly lit mess, what little was left of it, he spoke. "They think we're gone," Kane said, his voice carrying over the hum of failing lights. "They think they've erased us from the stars. But they made a mistake. They left us alive. And as long as one human draws breath, humanity is not finished. The crew stared at him, silent but burning with the same fire. "This ship will not be our coffin," Kane continued. "It will be our blade. We'll strike them where it hurts, remind them that humans don't die quietly. Every star they think safe, every world they think secure. We will haunt them. They will remember the name of this ship." He let the silence stretch. Then he said it, the word heavy as steel. "Retribution." The crew repeated it like an oath. Retribution. Not just the name of a ship, but a promise. A vow that would echo in the blood of every survivor. From that night, the mood changed. Despair turned into hunger. Fear turned into anticipation. They weren't running anymore. They were preparing to strike. And when the final systems clicked into place, when the jagged, reforged beast of a ship shuddered with power, the humans stood together on the bridge, eyes fixed on the stars. Captain Kane gave a single command. "Set a course." "For where, sir?" Kane's voice was calm, but the fire in his eyes was endless. "For the nearest alien outpost." The wreck they had been left to die in was gone. In its place, Retribution was born. And soon, the galaxy would learn what it meant to leave humans alive. The void had always been the aliens' domain. They ruled it with fleets, patrols, and stations that lit the darkness like stars. They believed no one could challenge their reach. But that was before Retribution awoke. The reforged human ship drifted silently, engines low, running dark. Its jagged hull bore scars that glowed faintly in the black, as if the ship itself still bled from its wounds. Inside, the survivors waited. Each heartbeat felt like thunder in their chests, but no one spoke. Silence was their shield. On the bridge, Captain Kane stood over the dim tactical display. It flickered weakly, patched together from salvaged parts, but it was enough. A small alien outpost floated ahead, orbiting a barren moon. It wasn't heavily defended, just a garrison and a handful of patrol craft. To the aliens, it was safe. To Retribution, it was prey. "Engines?" Kane asked quietly. "Stable," Mara Vey answered, fingers dancing over improvised controls. "Weapons?" "Charge. As much as they'll hold," another survivor muttered. Kane's gaze hardened. "Then we begin." The humans had no fleet, no reinforcements, no grand strategy. What they had was rage, and the ship that carried it. Retribution surged forward, breaking from the shadows like a predator from the brush. At first, the aliens on the outpost did not react. A lone, scared vessel approaching them was no threat. They assumed it was a pirate, or maybe another crippled human ship begging for mercy. They laughed as the strange, twisted silhouette drew closer. Then Retribution fired. The alien weapons stitched into its hull screamed, hurling molten fire across the void. The first salvo struck a patrol ship, tearing it apart before the crew even raised shields. The second blast slammed into the outpost itself, ripping holes in its docking ring. Explosions lit the darkness, debris spinning into space. Panic rippled through the alien garrison. Sirens blared. Commanders shouted. Fighters scrambled from hangars, but chaos ruled their launch. They had expected a dying ship. Instead, they faced something born from wreckage, something unpredictable and furious. On Retribution's bridge, the crew moved with grim focus. Their weapons were unstable, their systems fragile, but they fought with precision born from desperation. Every shot mattered. Every move carried purpose. Mara grinned savagely as another alien fighter exploded. "They don't know what to make of us." "They will," Kane said coldly. The alien outpost attempted to fight back. Its defense cannons blazed, striking Retribution's scared hull. The ship shuddered, plating cracking, alarms screaming. For a moment, it seemed the humans might finally fall. But they held. The survivors had lived through worse than fire. They had lived through the void itself trying to kill them. They pushed back, every blast of their weapons carrying the weight of vengeance. A final strike tore through the outpost's reactor core. The explosion lit the barren moon in a halo of fire. The station disintegrated, scattering its remains into the endless night. The battle was over. On the bridge of Retribution, silence fell. Smoke filled the air, panels sparked, and the ship's hull groaned under the strain. But they were alive. And more than that, they had won. Mara slumped into her seat, sweat streaking her soot-stained face. We actually did it. Kane did not smile. His eyes remained fixed on the burning remains of the outpost. No, he said. This is just the beginning. The survivors knew he was right. One outpost destroyed would not change the war, but it would send a message. Already, fragments of transmissions escaped into the void. Frantic distress calls, cut off by fire, carrying one detail over and over again. A scared human ship. The aliens would hear it. They would whisper about it. They would remember the vessel they had left for dead. And they would know fear. Retribution vanished back into the dark, engines cutting low once more. The survivors patched their ship again, welding scars over scars, building their weapons stronger. They had tasted blood. Now, they hungered for more. Soon, other outposts would burn. Other fleets would fall. And each time, the legend would spread. Across alien worlds, whispers began. Pirates spoke of a ghost ship. Soldiers spoke of a predator in the void. Civilians swore they had seen a scurred warship emerge from nothing, unleash fire, and vanish without a trace. It was not a fleet. It was not an army. It was a single ship. But to the galaxy, it was becoming something worse. A nightmare. And in the silence of Retribution's bridge, Captain Kane looked at his crew, scared, tired, but unbroken. They walked away from us, he said. They thought we would die. Instead, we rise, and with every battle, they'll learn what it means to leave humanity alive. The crew answered with a single word, their voices carrying like thunder through the steel bones of the ship. Retribution. And the void trembled. The galaxy had heard whispers. At first, they were dismissed as rumors, stories of a lone human ship that appeared from nowhere, struck with precision, and vanished before anyone could retaliate. But then the attacks grew bolder, more frequent. The outposts that had once been safe were now in flames. Patrol ships disappeared without a trace. Supply convoys were ripped apart as though hunted by an invisible predator. And through it all, Retribution moved like a shadow. The alien fleets, once masters of the void, scrambled in confusion. They could not predict its movements. It did not follow patterns. It did not fight like a conventional warship. It struck when it wanted, where it wanted, then vanished again. The survivors inside had learned to use every weakness of their enemies against them. They turned broken corridors into ambush points. They modified alien weapons to create traps. Every engagement taught them more. Every victory sharpened them. Captain Kane watched from the bridge, eyes scanning the flickering displays patched together from scavenged tech. Mara Vey sat beside him, hands flying over a console, her fingers dancing across worn keys as she monitored signals. "Another convoy?" Kane asked. "Two," Mara replied. "They're sending reinforcements from 3 systems ahead, but their sensors still haven't detected us. If we time it right." Kane nodded, understanding immediately. We strike fast, hard, and vanish before they realize what hit them. The humans had learned something the aliens had long forgotten. Fear was more powerful than firepower. As Retribution moved into position, the crew could feel it. The quiet thrill of the hunt, the pulse of a predator stalking its prey. The human ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a hunter, alive with purpose, with every scar and patch a testament to survival and vengeance. The convoy appeared, unaware of the trap. It was modest, confident in its numbers, thinking the lone human ship posed no real threat. But Retribution had grown smarter. Its weapons were modified, its tactics refined. Every approach had been studied, every weakness exploited. The first strike came from above, the ship's makeshift plasma cannons erupting with jagged arcs of energy. A freighter exploded, tearing apart its cargo bays. The lead cruiser tried to retaliate, but it was too slow, its systems outmatched. Torpedo tubes launched blindly, but the humans had anticipated every move. They dodged, countered, and struck again. Within minutes, the convoy was in chaos. Ships collided in panic, engines failing, weapons misfiring. Smoke and fire trailed in the void as Retribution slipped between them, untouchable, unstoppable. From the wreckage, the survivors watched with grim satisfaction. They had turned a broken ship into a machine that no fleet could catch, no sensor could detect, and no enemy could anticipate. "This is only the beginning," Kane said, his voice low but firm. Mara looked at him, eyes wide. "Do you think they'll ever stop fearing us?" Kane allowed himself a small smile, sharp and dangerous. "They won't. Not as long as Retribution moves through the void." Across the galaxy, the legend began to spread. Soldiers spoke of seeing a scarred warship appear out of nowhere, fire weapons no one had seen before, and disappear without a trace. Pilots whispered of shadows that moved faster than any known engine, of weapons that tore ships apart as if alive. Even the Council could no longer ignore it. They convened emergency sessions, sending fleets to hunt the ship, but each attempt ended in disaster. Entire squadrons vanished, outmaneuvered and outsmarted by a single human vessel. It was no longer a battle of ships and weapons. It was a battle of wills. Humanity's cunning, patience, and relentless determination had become a weapon far deadlier than any cannon or missile. Back on Retribution, the crew worked tirelessly. Every victory, every battle, taught them something new. Every patch and modification made the ship stronger, faster, deadlier. They had become more than survivors. They were hunters, predators born of fire and ruin, thriving in a galaxy that had once abandoned them. And Kane knew one thing: the aliens would make mistakes. They always did. Every misstep, every underestimation, every laugh at human weakness fed their power. The ship moved like a ghost, striking fear into the hearts of fleets across the stars. Outposts once considered safe were no longer sanctuaries. Supply lines were riddled with destruction. Everywhere, chaos followed in Retribution's wake. The humans whispered the name to themselves in awe and determination. Retribution. It was no longer just a ship, it was a legend. And in the darkness of space, legends can be deadlier than any fleet. The galaxy had seen humans as weak, as fragile, as doomed. The aliens had walked away, thinking their enemy broken, their threat extinguished. But Retribution had risen, and no fleet, no empire, no council could stop what had been forged in the fires of survival and vengeance. The ghost in the void had arrived. The galaxy was trembling. Outposts had fallen. Fleets had vanished. Supply lines were crippled. Every system whispered the same word in fear: Retribution. But the humans knew it was not enough to strike silently. To truly unbalance their enemies, they had to deliver a message, clear, undeniable, and terrifying. Captain Kane stood on the bridge of the scared ship, staring at the patched tactical displays. They were tracking communications satellites, planetary relays, and listening posts. Every outlet would carry their words. Every corner of the galaxy would hear them. Mara worked beside him, her hands flying across improvised controls. "They'll try to jam it," she warned. "But with what? Every system is already off balance from our strikes." Kane nodded. "Exactly. Let them hear this. Let them remember that humans do not die quietly." He activated the ship's broadcast systems. The message would go out simultaneously across the frequencies used by fleets, governments, and colonies. Every alien ear would catch it. The screen flickered, showing Kane's scared face. Behind him, the twisted hull of Retribution glowed faintly, a monument to survival and vengeance. His voice carried across the void, calm, steady, and unyielding. You left us to die. You abandoned our ships. You thought humanity was finished. You thought Earth would never rise. You were wrong. The first transmission hit alien fleets. Officers froze at the words, uncertain how to respond. Across command decks, alarms sounded, but no one knew what action to take. The voice continued. We remember every attack, every death, every world you destroyed in your arrogance. You believed we were weak. You believed we would vanish quietly into the void. We survived. We endured. And now, we strike. The humans had modified the transmission to pierce shields, override encryption, and ensure clarity. Every system, no matter how secure, carried the words like a hammer blow. From this moment forward, Kane continued, his eyes burning with resolve. Retribution will hunt every fleet, every outpost, every command center you thought safe. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. You left us for dead, and now, the dead rise with fire in their veins. Panic spread like wildfire. Alien fleets abandoned formations, scrambling to flee the systems already marked by the ship's attacks. Commanders shouted in disbelief, trying to maintain order as their crews trembled at the sound of human vengeance echoing across their communications. In colonies, civilians fled to bunkers, shutting down communications entirely, hoping to hide. Every eye in the galaxy watched the horizon, waiting for the shadow of retribution. Kane let the message linger, allowing the silence to carry the weight of their threat. Then he finished, slowly, deliberately. This is not a warning. This is a promise. The humans you sought to erase have returned, and retribution has just begun. The broadcast ended, but its impact resonated instantly. Every alien command, every fleet, every council chamber knew that the humans were no longer just survivors. They were hunters, they were predators, and they were unstoppable. Back on Retribution, the crew let out the tension they had held for weeks. Exhaustion, fear, and adrenaline mixed together, leaving a quiet, burning satisfaction. They had sent their message. The galaxy would remember it. Mara turned to Kane. Do you think they understand? She asked quietly. Kane's eyes never left the view of the dark void. They understand one thing, he said. Fear. They know we are coming. And they will never feel safe again. In the following hours, reports poured in. Entire fleets turned back from missions. Outposts abandoned their posts. Colonies shut down trade and communications, trying to hide from the wrath of a single human ship. Rumors spread faster than fleets could move. The humans are back. They are hunting every system we thought secure. Retribution is not just a ship. It is vengeance made flesh. Every whisper, every panic transmission carried the same chilling realization. The aliens had walked away once, leaving humans for dead. They had been wrong. Retribution was no longer a ghost in the void. It was a beacon, a warning, a reckoning. And from the bridge of the scared vessel, Captain Kane looked at his crew, each of them battered but alive, each of them ready for the next strike. We've made them afraid, he said. Good. Now we take the next step. The galaxy will learn what happens when humans are left to die. The survivors echoed his resolve, voices steady and unshakable. Retribution, they said. And somewhere, across the endless void, fleets faltered. Outposts trembled. Commanders whispered the name in disbelief. The humans had sent their message, and it was deadly. The galaxy was no longer at ease. Everywhere, alien fleets and outposts whispered of retribution. The lone human ship, scared and relentless, had shattered the illusion of safety. Its attacks were no longer random. They were calculated, precise, and merciless. Captain Kane stood on the bridge, eyes scanning patched-together displays. They had mapped patterns of the alien fleets, noting weaknesses, habits, and predictable movements. It was time to strike harder. We've made them afraid, Kane said, voice steady. Now we make them desperate. Mara adjusted the ship's course, her fingers flying across improvised controls. Multiple convoys ahead, systems wide open. They're moving supplies to reinforce their outposts. Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. Perfect. We take it all. And we make them remember why they left us for dead. The survivors prepared Retribution for a new level of assault. Engines roared louder, weapons charged with salvaged alien tech, and the ship's hull bristled with every scar and modification they had forged. It was no longer just a repaired vessel. It was a machine built for vengeance. The first strike of the day hit a supply convoy. The aliens thought they had learned from the last attacks, but Retribution had evolved. The humans anticipated their tactics, turning the enemy's patterns against them. Ships collided in confusion, engines exploded, and panic ruled every deck. Across the galaxy, the message was clear: no fleet was safe, no system could hide from Retribution. Even as the humans destroyed supply lines, survivors from other battles began seeking them out. Small bands of humans, hidden across distant systems, brought their knowledge and resolve. They joined Retribution, swelling its power, though still far from a full fleet. Kane recognized this. "They think they can crush us alone," he said. "They are wrong. Every human they thought lost is rising again. And every strike we make inspires more." The aliens began to respond, desperately assembling fleets to hunt down the ship. But they were always late. Their formations faltered under fear, their commanders hesitant, uncertain. They had underestimated humans once. They would do so again and again. Retribution struck fast, a predator in the dark. One fleet after another fell. Outposts that once stood proud were now skeletal ruins. Panic spread faster than ships could move. Rumors of the ghost ship reached even the most distant colonies, and civilians fled in fear. In the heat of battle, Marave watched as the last of an alien cruiser erupted into fire. "They don't know how to fight us," she muttered. Kane nodded. "They forgot what humans endure. Every storm, every war, every trial we've survived. This is what it teaches us, and they are about to learn it firsthand." As they moved through the void, the crew grew bolder. They experimented with new tactics, combining alien technology with human ingenuity. They became unpredictable, unstoppable. The tide had truly turned. Where once humans were the hunted, they were now the hunters. Each system they touched fell into chaos, and each success inspired whispers across the stars. Humans who had hidden, who had survived alone, began contacting Retribution, offering support, knowledge, and even ships rebuilt from scraps. Kane looked out at the dark expanse before them. "They wanted us gone," he said quietly. "But humanity does not vanish. It adapts. It survives. And now, it strikes." The ship's hull glowed with energy, weapons charging for the next assault. Each scar on its frame was a warning, each patch a testament to survival. Retribution had become more than a ship. It was a movement, a symbol, a living message of vengeance and resilience. The galaxy had seen humans as weak, disposable, and broken. Now they saw a force that could not be stopped. The alien fleets scrambled again, but hesitation cost them. Convoys fell, outposts burned, and every loss further unbalanced their command structures. Fear had become their enemy, and humans had weaponized it perfectly. Back on the bridge, the crew shared a quiet moment of grim satisfaction. They had risen from wreckage, defeated fleets, and survived the void. And now, the galaxy was beginning to understand the cost of underestimating humanity. Kane's voice cut through the hum of systems. "The galaxy will remember this day, not for what we destroyed, but for what we represent. Humanity survives, humanity strikes, and humanity will never stop." Mara smiled, her eyes glowing with determination. "Then let them remember us well." The ship surged forward, engines roaring like a beast awakened. Another convoy awaited. Another outpost lay unprotected. Retribution would not pause, would not retreat, would not show mercy. Every strike, every victory, every whisper of fear across the stars was proof. The tide had turned. Humans were no longer the hunted. They were the reckoning. And the galaxy would tremble. The alien flagship loomed on the edge of the system, massive and arrogant, its hull gleaming under the cold light of distant stars. Inside, commanders were frantic. After months of relentless attacks by a single human ship, their fleets fractured, their outposts lay in ruins, and morale had plunged to desperate lows. And now the source of all their fear, the scared human warship called Retribution, approached once more. Captain Kane stood on the bridge, calm and resolute, his crew ready for the moment they had prepared for their entire ordeal. Every scar on their bodies mirrored the scars of the ship they had rebuilt, every wound a reminder of what they had survived. "This is it," Kane said, voice firm. "The enemy thinks they are untouchable. They've underestimated us at every step. Now, they will learn what it means to leave humans alive." Marave tightened her grip on the controls. Weapons ready. Engines at full. Shields holding. Kane nodded. "Then we end this." Retribution moved like a predator through the void. Its jagged hull gleamed with energy, weapons humming, engines roaring. The humans had studied every known pattern of the alien flagship's defenses, every weak point, every blind spot, every overconfidence the aliens relied on was known. They had prepared for this moment with precision, patience, and fury. The first strike was surgical. Plasma beams tore through shielding, tearing away armor like paper. Missile arrays and turrets erupted in fire as Retribution's weapon systems, modified and enhanced from alien technology, struck with devastating accuracy. The alien flagship responded, unleashing its full fury. Entire sections of Retribution were hit. Sparks flew, hull plates cracked, and alarms screamed. Yet the ship held, every system patched in moments of desperation, every weapon ready for another strike. Inside, the crew moved like a single organism. Mara rerouted power from damaged sections to engines and weapons. Technicians fired cannons, recalibrated energy shields, and maintained the ship under impossible pressure. Every human was alive with purpose, every action precise. The flagship had never faced an enemy like this. Every maneuver the humans made countered their strategy. Every attack anticipated and returned with ruthless efficiency. Panic spread among the alien command. Orders were shouted, ignored, or executed too late. Fleet cohesion dissolved. Kane's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Focus on the core. We end this now." Retribution surged forward, dodging energy blasts and striking with surgical precision. The ship's reinforced hull took hits that would have destroyed lesser vessels, armor groaning but holding. Weapons fired in perfect synchrony, tearing through shielding and plating. Explosions rocked the alien flagship. Decks collapsed, energy cores overloaded, and vital systems went dark one by one. The crew, once proud and confident, fled to escape pods. Panic, confusion, and despair consumed every corner of the ship. Finally, Kane gave the order. Final strike. All weapons to the core. The energy surge, a focused beam of fury and vengeance. The alien flagship's core ignited in a catastrophic chain reaction. Tremors shook the void as the ship erupted in fire, sending fragments spiraling into space. The flagship, the symbol of alien dominance, was no more. Silence fell. For the first time in decades, the alien fleets were leaderless, scattered, and broken. Across the galaxy, systems held their breath, watching the shadow of Retribution pass through, leaving ruin in its wake. On the bridge, the human survivors stood in exhausted triumph. Every member of the crew bore wounds, burns, and scars, but their eyes shone with unyielding resolve. They had survived the impossible, risen from wreckage, and struck down an empire that had thought them finished. Kane turned to his crew, voice low but proud. "They'd walked away from us once. They'd left us for dead. They thought we were fragile, weak, and gone. They were wrong." The crew echoed him, voices strong and steady. Retribution. Through the void, The galaxy trembled. The legend of the scared human ship, the survivors who had turned wreckage into vengeance, spread faster than any fleet. Aliens whispered in fear, governments recalculated alliances, and every being that had underestimated humanity now understood a simple, undeniable truth. Humans do not die quietly. They rebuild. They adapt. And when pushed to the edge, they strike back with fire, ingenuity, and relentless determination. Retribution, battered but unbroken, drifted through the wreckage of the alien fleets. The survivors looked out at the stars, knowing this victory was only the beginning. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as prey, but as predators. Every system, every fleet, every empire would learn the cost of underestimating them. Captain Kane's eyes swept over the void, the endless darkness of space filled with possibilities. "The galaxy will remember us," he said quietly, "not for what we destroyed, but for what we are. Humanity survives. Humanity strikes. Humanity will never be defeated." And with that, Retribution surged forward, engines blazing, weapons ready, a scared symbol of vengeance, survival, and unyielding resolve. The galaxy had feared the end of humanity. Instead, it had witnessed the rise of something far worse for those who had tried to destroy them. Retribution would hunt them all, and the stars themselves would tremble.